I'm almost certain the sound Mars heard is gonna be revealed to be Vegapunk's gargantuan brain. That is certainly one possibility. And the reason why I think a lot of people are jumping on this is because of the sound effect. I'm curious to see what the official translation does with this, but in the scans it was translated as guggle guggle. But the onomatopoeia in question is gubbable, which means bubbling, good gubble, but also pouring and or gushing for those of you who enjoy that word. And there's two immediate thoughts that spawn in my mind brain because of that. One would be that Mars may have walked into a bit of a bubble trap. Vegapunk loves using bubbles, and this whole thing could be an elaborate genius trap to pacify one of the 5 elders. But I think the only reason why my mind goes to that first is because I've recently seen Kaku in a bubble again, so I've got a case of bubbles on the brain. The other, I think much more reasonable thought is exactly what the commenter suggested. That we're going to see Vegapunk's colossal brain contained in some sort of equally as colossal liquid jar, or even any number of things that you could find and develop within bubbling liquid. The Seraphim, for example, they've each got their own individual bubble gubba pods, but another one of these would be a bit boring and unnecessary to keep so far out of the way. So what if this was another clone, but it was a secret clone? Maybe even something left over from the Mads days. Remember that Mads appear to have existed primarily for the project of cloning the Rocks pirates, and of those clones we've only seen 2 of what we'll call success stories, maybe even 1.5, because the clone jury is still out on Weevil, so here he is as delicious toast for no reason. Picture this, right? You are Marcus Mars, so you're now very tall, but you're also a big scary Birdman, a legendary Pokemon that not even a Master Ball could capture. So you stroll into the slab, swinging your metaphorical man parts around, and then you see it. A bubbling Gobabo tank containing a clone of Rox D. Zebek, the greatest enemy that the world government has ever known, and you have just accidentally woken him up. That is an incredible long shot. I think the simplest and most correct answer is, Vegapunk's brain, but I cannot dismiss crazy ideas, not in this arc. I've also seen a couple of people who suggested that the sound effect is York's stomach growling, because it's been a while since the greedy Vegapunk has gorged herself. And as funny as it would be, Marcus Mars did sense a presence here. So whatever he's seeing, be it brain or brain along with the rest of her body, it is probably a living being. Also, someone with a hard to say name left this in the comments, and now I can't unsee it. But in human form, I love the idea of a One Piece spin-off following the adventures of Mars and York solving crime together like Holmes and Watson, because Mars really does have that classic investigator look about him. Also, did Mars remind anyone else of their grandparents in this chapter? Marcus Mars does the old man thing of not understanding how technology works, so he just destroys whatever he can see in an attempt to try and end Vegapunk's livestream. And Zumi York is just standing there like, "Grandpa, please, you just need to press these buttons." And speaking of a bit confused, this chapter seems to have left a lot of people lingering on a question mark, and not in a good way. The ending was confusing, and I'm not even smart enough to be excited about what it is. I think that's fair, and look, even if you were smart enough, it is deliberately vague. You are not supposed to know what's going on here. Oda has essentially said, look, here's a thing, and I'll tell you what the thing is later, so don't look at it because you cannot see it. I really wonder what York meant by creating more, quote, sins. I don't think she's talking about more satellites, even though they are more or less referencing the 7 deadly sins. Maybe it's a rule system. This is another one of those things that I'm very keen to see the official tackle, because sometimes the scans do say weird things like this. I feel like York's mention of the term sins is just speaking in terms that the world nobles would use. It's in quotation marks, which indicates that it's not part of York's personal lexicon, and the sins themselves would be stuff like assaulting the 5 elders, which multiple people have done now. Luffy, Kuma, Dory, and Broggy at least. Oh, and also Bonnie. And I guess Vegapunk's broadcast to the world is a sin as well, because he's trying to undermine the holy divine authority of the world government, and both of these are the sort of thing that's punishable by death on Marijois, the home of the gods. So I think that York is trying to be as diplomatic as she can be about this situation, acknowledging that yes, almighty God, sins have occurred, because her life is very much still at stake here as well. I'm convinced that Oda only spent so much time introducing these vice admirals as if they were going to be something big, just as an excuse to create some funny designs that he had stored in a drawer. I don't necessarily disagree with that. At any given time, Oda has an entire universe of designs just sitting in miscellaneous notebooks. There are literally thousands of unused designs that we will never see. So I like the idea that he's putting them to use, and all of the vice admirals, they look great. I love how unique they all are, and even if they're not quite getting the showcase that I would have personally liked, I would definitely prefer this to the thought of doing the same thing but with generically designed Marines. Because we're not getting to know them, but at least it feels like we're interacting with real people, not personality void fodder. Luffy's gear third hand looked a little burned, not just hurt. I had the same thought at first. I saw Luffy Luffy's hand on fire and I was like, oh my god, what is this? Does War Curie have some sort of special demonic fire? But then I remembered that Red Rock is a fire-based attack, and that Luffy's hand is on fire because he himself conjured the fire. Now that Luffy is out of Gear 5, does that mean that the Iron Giant is back to sleep again? Oh my god, I didn't even think about that. The Iron Giant woke up because of Luffy's Gear 5th heartbeat. He was, or at least we were led to believe, that he was being powered by Luffy at the moment. So with no more Gear 5th, does the Iron Giant just go back to a nice restful sleep? Or has Luffy used the form so much that the Iron Giant now actually has some charge left? We're talking like between 2 to 5%, which would be a really convenient way for Oda to avoid revealing so many secrets of the Void Century so soon. I think most people are leaning towards the idea that the Iron Giant will take the place of the Vega Force 1 in helping the Thousand Sunny to escape the range of the Marines. And maybe after that job is done, it runs out of power, because otherwise we're going to start to get very chatty. And this big boy has a lot of spoilers that we may not quite be ready for. But even though it's not happening anytime soon, I am very keen for a future where the Iron Giant and Zunesha end up meeting, because they're probably old Nakama. Very, very old. What are the chances that Vegapunk's message is coded in the talk about coffee? This idea is stupid, but genius. Imagine if the 10 minutes are up and it's finally time for the truth to be revealed, and all Vegapunk says is, well, that's it. I've just told you the whole truth. Have fun. Or maybe something more thematic like, my truth, you can have it. I left everything I gathered together in one place, which is this message. And I have gone back on these panels to try and see if there's any kind of hidden coded message, but it really is just a lot of coffee talk. So the coffee would have to be a metaphor for something. So the most interesting line I found was this one. What is that, Stella? Why, it's the dream of all mankind. Vega coffee. One little speck of this stuff dropped in water and you've got instantly nice warm coffee. And I don't know, maybe that's just the ad that One Piece Twitch is playing before Vegapunk's stream, or it could just be comical hyperbole, but any mention of dreams, especially the dreams of all mankind, is something that should not be easily dismissed. For all we know, Vegapunk's giving us the secret to reaching Laugh Tale through this coffee code, or even just using it as a metaphor to describe Luffy. Just one drop of Luffy into the world, and you've got nice warm hopes and dreams. It might even be a coded message for the remaining Vegapunks, something that no one but their crazy minds would understand. But even if it's none of that, I love that Vegapunk made coffee to fill the 10 minutes and he can't even drink it because it's still too hot for his large sensitive tongue, and it will not cool down by the time that the 10 minutes are up. Although who knows, they have still got a minute to invent something to cool it down, which I think they're already working on. But there is something quite absurdist about this whole situation, which could either be incredible Oda writing, layering, foreshadowing, giving away the game via coffee, or it could just be the Vegapunk screwing around. Frankie has Centaur mode. There should be a Centaur versus Centaur situation. Mate, true. How could I forget that Frankie actually has the solution to dealing with Ethan? You want to be a Centaur? I will be a Centaur as also. Haki doesn't make you invincible though. Luffy defeated the Boa Sisters without armament or observation Haki back in Amazon Lily. If you're strong enough, you can bypass Haki defenses. So this is a reference to me pointing out the oddity of Frankie beating Red King when Red King is a confirmed Haki user and Frankie is not. And to be fair, I probably didn't word this as well as I could have. The point wasn't that a non-Haki user should never be able to beat a Haki user. It's not that specifically Frankie shouldn't be able to beat his Haki using opponents. I just find it weird that his Haki using opponents don't ever use their Haki against Frankie, or Robin, or any of the Straw Hats without Haki, which makes it feel like a story convenience. I'm all for them showing Haki and Frankie just plowing through them regardless. That would be very thematically appropriate. Frankie physically manifesting his own iron will by constructing this body, that would be really cool. It just feels like certain members of the Straw Hats are playing this game on easy mode, where the enemies don't have Haki and have like half the health, whereas the Monster Trio are playing One Piece on hardcore, where every enemy has 10 times the health and all of the Haki. In regards to the example in the comments, Luffy didn't, technically beat the Boa Sisters. He tied their tails together, which in retrospect is a very fun, cartoony solution, and then he hopped onto Sandersonia's back to hide her tattoo, at which point Hancock stopped the fight. I'm not saying that Luffy wouldn't have won. He definitely would have, I just don't think that using the Boa Sisters is a great example, especially because they're not anywhere near the same scale of opponents as, say, the Tobiropo. Key point. The Nisjiro, who is Ethan Baron V Nisjiro, refers to Bonnie as a girl, paying respect to her celestial dragon side. That is a really good point, and he's not the only one either. Before all of the siege properly began, Saturn also referred to Bonnie as a girl on multiple occasions. She's just a girl. And at the time, that made it sound quite dismissive, as if the way regular humans would use it, you're just a girl. But it actually might have been quite the opposite, and it may well have been out of respect for her partial world noble heritage, because with everyone else, the Elder Stars seem to favor the term insect and don't even refer to people as human in any way. However, Jewelry Bonnie seems to have the right to at least be recognized as a girl, the same species, albeit a highly inferior member in their eyes. Good thing Saturn doesn't wear panties. First point, how do you know that? And second point, it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out why this was even said, but it's because Saturn is climbing up the Labophase legs first, which would result in a bit of an upskirt view for Nami, Chopper, and Usopp. How strong is Kuma that he was essentially able to vaporize Saturn with one armament punch, while essentially unconscious and nearly dead when Luffy could not even hurt a different Elder with a stronger attack, and not only that, but it hurt Luffy in return. So I don't think that all of the Elders are as physically tanky as Topman Walkyrie, because we've also seen Luffy hit Saint Saturn and Bro got sent flying. I think that different Elders probably have different specialties, with Big Pig's specialty being tanking. He probably has the toughest hide and some of the most physically powerful attacks, but he lacks the utilities of the other Elders. Like how Saturn seems to have the whole poison buff going, Ethan has the speed and precision, Jupiter is a worm and that's unique as well, and Mars can fly and shoot bird beams. So they've all got their special powers, and when you combine them together, they have the utility to do essentially anything. As an Icelandic person, I feel very special knowing that my shitty traditional food is begin represented in my favorite pirate comic. Yeah, a lot of Icelandic people corrected me in the chapter review. I didn't realize I had so many Icelandic viewers, but I made a mistake. I said that the fermented shark was Hakari, but it's actually Hakarl with an L. And you know what? I've probably made a mistake pronouncing that too. But apparently these sharks taste so foul because of their high concentration of urea. And as a result, they're often called piss sharks. And you know what? Something very telling about this is that Luffy ate a devil fruit and had no reaction to the taste of it. But then he ate Hakal and he was like, ugh. So Hakal tastes even worse than a devil fruit. So there is a lot to be proud about if you're Icelandic. Not just the piss sharks, but there's also the elves that live in the rocks, the crazy 80s hair metal horses. There's also a penis museum, dicks for days in there, and of course Cronin, where I went that one time to buy groceries. What I currently don't get is the power scaling. How were pirates ever a threat to anything with the 5 elders in the picture? It's probably because in one-on-one fights, or even in 5-on-1 fights, sure, the elders are pretty guaranteed to beat anyone, but again, they do have their specialties and probably have bad matchups. Like, I don't imagine that Saint Saturn is going to fare particularly well against an opponent like Kaido, but all 5 elders together could probably bring him down. But also, there's only so much that 5 individuals can do to maintain global order. If tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people simultaneously rise up against them, it doesn't matter if they're the 5 strongest beings, they cannot handle that. I mean, consider what's happening right now in Egghead. You've got all 5 elders and they're still being stretched quite thin on a mission to capture or kill or stop less than like 20 people. And only one of those less than 20 people is really capable of fighting back against them. And they're still really struggling to get the job done. So when emperors like Big Mom or Whitebeard rock up who can equal if not surpass them in strength, and they have tens of thousands of pirates behind them, you can see that it's not a problem easily dealt with. Ideally, the 5 elders are probably meant to be the last line of defense. When everything goes to hell, we embrace said hell and become frontline demons. Also, as a matter of winning over the world's trust, it's probably in their best interest to keep these powers secret. They have to maintain the facade of being holy beings, and constantly using their abilities in public against powerful pirates causing problems would be no good because people would see them. And it's the job of the 5 elders to make sure that no one knows that the devil actually exists. Yamato is going to Egghead Island. Alright, I've seen a lot of people with this impression and I don't quite know why. In the cover story, we see Kinemon giving Yamato a parting gift in exchange for a favor that Kinemon wants done. So I think that some people read the word parting and immediately assume that Yamato is leaving Wano, as if that's the only place you could part from. But Yamato is just departing the flower capital. The whole idea is for Yamato to travel around Wano first, which I imagine is all this cover story is going to tell. So whatever Kinemon wants done, it's probably much more mundane than what some people are hoping. It's probably something like help my wife rebuild Okabori Town, which was burned down by Hold'em. When are Kid and Law returning? I don't know, but I think the question we should be asking is, how long can Kid and Law hold their breath? Because we've left them both deep in the waters of the New World. And I don't think we're done with them, but these gents need a gap year or something from piracy to really reflect on their actions and figure out what they want to / what they can realistically do for the future. And if you'd like to be the first to know when Law and Kid do make their life choices, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel for consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into your YouTube feed.